Lila had always been different. While other children played in the sunshine, she preferred the shadows. She found comfort in the cool, quiet places where the world felt still. But it wasn't until her 12th birthday that she realized just how different she was. It started when she was sitting alone in her room. The sun was setting, casting long shadows on the walls. She stared at the shifting shapes, lost in thought. "Hello," a voice said softly. Lila jumped, her eyes darting around the room. "Who's there?" "It's me," the voice replied. Lila's heart raced. "Where are you?" The shadow of her bedside lamp stretched across the wall. It tilted slightly, as if bowing. "I'm right here," it said. Lila blinked. "You're a shadow?" The shadow chuckled. "I'm your shadow. We've always been together, but you're only now learning to hear me." "What do you mean?" Lila asked, her voice trembling. "You have a gift," the shadow said. "You can talk to us, those who live in the darkness." Lila stared at the shadow, unsure whether to feel scared or excited. "Why me?" "Because you see the world differently," it replied. "And soon, you'll need to use your gift." Before Lila could ask more, her mother called from downstairs. "Lila, dinner's ready." She glanced at the shadow one last time before running down to the kitchen. That night, Lila couldn't sleep. The shadow's words echoed in her mind. She sat up and looked around her room, where shadows danced in the moonlight. "Are you still here?" she whispered. A shadow on the wall shifted. "Always." "What did you mean earlier?" Lila asked. "There's a world beyond this one," the shadow said. "A world of shadows. Something is happening there, something dangerous, and it will spill into your world if it isn't stopped." Lila felt a chill. "What can I do?" "You'll know when the time comes," the shadow replied. The next day, Lila couldn't stop thinking about the shadow's words. After school, she went to the library to research shadows and their myths. Most of what she found was unhelpful, legends of monsters and ghosts. But one book caught her eye. It was an old, dusty tome called The Veil Between Worlds. Inside, she found a passage about the shadow world, a realm parallel to her own, where shadows lived and moved freely. "The veil grows thin when the two worlds are unbalanced," the book read. "If the shadow world breaks through, it could consume the light." Lila's heart raced. Was this what her shadow had meant? That night, as she lay in bed, the shadow spoke again. "The balance is breaking," it said. "We need your help." "How?" Lila asked, sitting up. The shadow didn't answer with words. Instead, it grew larger, stretching across the wall until it covered the entire room. "Step through," it said. Lila hesitated. The shadow was dark and endless, but something about it felt familiar, almost inviting. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the shadow. The world around her shifted. The air grew cold, and the ground beneath her feet felt like smooth stone. When she opened her eyes, she was in a vast, gray landscape. Shadows of trees, buildings, and people moved without their counterparts. "Where am I?" Lila asked. "The shadow world," her shadow replied, now standing beside her in a humanoid form. It gestured to the sky, where dark clouds swirled ominously. "The balance is breaking because of him." Lila followed its gaze and saw a massive, looming figure in the distance. Its shadowy form towered over the landscape, and its eyes glowed red. "Who is that?" Lila whispered. "The Shadow King," her shadow said. "He seeks to control both worlds. If he succeeds, there will be no light left." Lila felt a wave of fear. "What can I do against someone like that?" The shadow placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think, Lila. Your connection to us gives you power. But you must believe in yourself." Lila followed her shadow through the shadow world, the air growing heavier with each step. The closer they got to the Shadow King, the darker the world became. "What will happen if he wins?" Lila asked. "Your world will be consumed by darkness," the shadow replied. "No more light, no more life." Lila clenched her fists. "I won't let that happen." They reached a massive castle made entirely of shifting shadows. At the entrance, two shadowy guards blocked their path. "You cannot pass," one of them growled. Lila stepped forward, her voice steady. "I need to see the Shadow King." The guards laughed. "And why would he see you?" Before Lila could answer, her shadow stretched upward, growing larger and more menacing. "She is the one who can stop him," it said, its voice echoing through the castle. The guards hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the castle was cold and silent. The walls seemed to pulse with darkness, and Lila felt a chill run down her spine. At the center of the throne room sat the Shadow King. His massive form loomed over her, and his red eyes burned like fire. "You're the one causing all this," Lila said, summoning all her courage. The Shadow King laughed, a deep, rumbling sound. "And what can a human child do about it?" Lila stepped closer. "I can restore the balance." The Shadow King leaned forward. "You think you can control shadows? They obey me." "Not all of them," Lila said, glancing at her own shadow. Her shadow nodded and stepped forward. Together, they began to glow faintly, their light pushing back the darkness. The Shadow King roared, "You dare challenge me?" The room shook, and shadows lunged toward Lila. But she stood firm, her connection to her shadow growing stronger. "You're not the only one with power," Lila said, her voice steady. She raised her hands, and a burst of light erupted from her shadow, scattering the darkness. The Shadow King screamed as his form began to dissolve. The castle trembled, and the shadows around her faded into nothingness. When the light dimmed, the Shadow King was gone, and the shadow world felt calm and still. "You did it," her shadow said, its voice filled with pride. Lila smiled. "We did it." Back in her room, Lila sat by the window, watching the sun rise. The shadows on her wall moved gently, as if thanking her. From that day on, Lila knew she wasn't just a girl who loved the shadows. She was their protector, ensuring the balance between light and dark would never break again.